Welcome to the Executive Coaching Podcast, where Executive Coach Alicia Cowan will discuss leadership topics and coaching solutions to tackle the most difficult problems that keep you from leading your team to success.
Hey there, senior leaders. It's Alicia Cowan. Welcome to episode 62 of the Executive Coaching Podcast. It's late March as I'm recording this, and I will tell you, it has been such a busy start to the year. We really just catapulted into 2025 and just keep going. I can't believe it's almost April. We just got back from wrapping up spring break and really got back to business and business as usual this week with every activity and school kicking back into full swing. We had a really killer spring break. We're lucky because we live in a place where people save up their whole lives to come on vacation, and so we have it all right at our fingertips. So we just did a couple of fun things locally around here for spring break. We went to Hollywood Studios at Disney. We went to the beach a couple times. We went to Siesta Key Beach and went to Sarasota and had a really good time. The weather is just beautiful right now. And we had a couple pool parties at the house for the kids. So they got to have some friends over and just relax and have a good time. And then we are back into cheer competition season and headed to Nashville for a competition this coming weekend as I'm recording this. So when this goes live, we will have been back. So a lot going on. And one thing I've been doing recently, and I started kind of at the beginning of the year, was just checking in with some of my previous clients. I've had them on my mind and been thinking a lot about my previous clients. And so just been trying to connect and touch base recently and see how they're doing. So a lot of you say that you are listening to the podcast, so you know who you are. Hi. And I want to give a big shout out to all my previous clients, because what's been fun and really cool is as I've been checking in with them and how they're doing, they've been sharing with me all of their recent accomplishments and all the stuff and activities that they have going on. So I've heard about new promotions on the horizon. I've heard about people leading previous roles and getting new roles that they're excited about. There's been lots of change in the world and lots of change management. And so some of you are experiencing new C-suite leaders and lots of new leadership teams and peers and bosses and people that you're working with. Some of you have started businesses, which is really cool. Some of you are expanding your family, and a lot of you are working on hiring and building your teams out. So there is so much work being done and a lot of forward progress. I will say that. So well done to you. You know who you are. And also, I was thinking about this as I was working out this morning. I was thinking about all of these topics I've been talking about with my previous clients. And I want to talk today about 10 lessons that I've learned from coaching senior leaders. I started thinking about my clients and what I've learned and experienced in my over 4 years of having my own coaching business, but also, again, being in HR for, gosh, I don't know, 15, 20 years now. I also have experienced so many different lessons along the way that I think a lot of people want to know about. And a lot of people, I think, are aspiring to be in that C-suite or that senior level of leadership. And a lot of people also want to know, even if they already are in that senior level of leadership, they want to know how other people are doing it. They want to know, like, what are other people experiencing and if things feel common or if things feel similar across industries and across different levels. And so I get asked that question a lot. So I'm going to share a couple of lessons. There's so many. I don't even know if I could capture them all on one podcast by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm going to share some of the ones that just are top of mind today. So let's hit it in no particular order here. So number one, what I've learned is, as a senior leader, you will still have the same amount of time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you're not going to get more time just because you're at a certain level of leadership, and you have to find different ways of working. So nowadays, I will say with this, it's so ubiquitous to be quote unquote busy and to have a lot on your plate and to say you're busy in response to the question, like, how are you doing? And I think a lot of times people shy away from ascending to senior levels of leadership. I've heard this very commonly, very often, that people think that they have to work more hours and they have to work all the time if they become a senior leader. And so I will say this, what I've learned from people at this level is that you do have to take a step back and you do have to think about how you work and how you use your time. When you get to this level and you're a senior leader, you cannot just muscle your way through it. And I think some people just think if I can tack on more hours and I can just do more work, then you will muscle your way through it and we can do it. That is not how people get to success at this level. That is not it. And so you have to step back and think about how you work and how you use your time effectively. And there's lots of different strategies here. Recently, I was working with a VP and she was taking on a new role, and she was really thinking before she got into the role how to onboard herself into this role and how to really took a step back and looked at what we call the ideal week. And I worked through with her how to like plan out what an ideal week would look like. And again, this is very much when the mindset of like nothing's ever going to be perfect, and we're not aiming for everything to fall into this perfect slot. But when you have the things that are priority to you, how do you plan around it? How do you make best use of your time and just be strategic about it? So that is one, right? So it's not always a requirement to work more hours just to be successful, but you do have to be strategic about your time. All right, number two, imposter syndrome exists at all levels, no matter what title, no matter what pay level you get to, no matter the size of the company you're running, it doesn't matter. Overcoming doubt and imposter syndrome is imperative. I will say this. So I think I've been working and coaching a lot of leaders that are working through trying to build the self-confidence that they need to lead at these senior levels of leadership. A lot of what I hear sometimes is people get into these C-suite or senior levels of leadership and they say, how did I get here? Like they all of a sudden find themselves in the room with C-suite peers or the board, or they're like looking around and they feel doubt. They start to feel like an imposter. Like, how did I get into this room at this level? And it's like this whole identity shift that sometimes leaves people feeling less than sure of themselves. And so this can be a real feeling. I've also talked to leaders that sometimes get afraid of like being public about their new role and their new title. You know, maybe for example, they're thinking about changing their title on LinkedIn or putting it out there publicly that they're in this new leadership role, and they get afraid of what people are going to say or what they might think. You know, things like, you know, if I change my title, people might be like, well, how did she get that role? And who does she think she is? Right? It's so fascinating that there are lots of voices in our heads trying to keep us small, you know, and understanding why the brain does this to us and how do we overcome it in order to be confident and self-confident and know that you have your own back at this level is so important. So it's not uncommon. There's nothing wrong with you if you feel at this level, and it is easy to overcome, but it does take some work. So that's one thing I see. That's one something I see that is not uncommon for leaders at this level. So number three, yes, it is hard to be a senior leader, but it's not always difficult in the ways that you might typically think and have expected. So what I mean by this is I do think a lot of people think that it's difficult to lead at this level, and they recognize that it might be difficult, but they don't always understand the ways that it is more tricky. And the ways that it can be more tricky is, one, it takes a lot of mental toughness at this level. You also have to have a very resilient, strong skill set in your tool belt. And you also have to have the ability to live with and to move through discomfort. And a lot of these skills I don't think are visible from the outside. And a lot of people, I think, again, like I said, earlier with the time management and the hours, I think people just think it takes a lot more like output or time or whatever, sitting through meetings and doing all these things. Um, but really, I think there's a lot of mental toughness and again, like I said, the ability to like live and sit in discomfort that just people don't realize. They think it's like going to be comfortable at this level, or by the time you get to this level, you've got it figured out. But it takes a lot of these skill sets that I don't think people are aware of. Okay. Number four, kind of tied to this as well, is that your health can make or break you at the senior level of leadership. What I mean by this is that there's certain habits that you need, like, and you'd have to have a good level of health in order to be ready to lead at this level. So here's an example. At this level, again, I think the skills that I discussed, there are a lot of mental capacity skills, like a lot of mental health that is required. And mental health is, of course, paramount to us being like, successful and functioning well in the workplace. And again, I don't mean, of course, like a baseline of mental health, but also mental strength and mental fitness and being ready for all the challenges. And again, like I said, a lot of those are like um, skills that again are not evident. There's not these hard skills. I hate the word soft skills, but it is a soft skill. And a lot of it takes a mental prowess. You have to be ready in ways that you might be surprised at. Physical health, of course. Again, I've seen leaders get really burned out and get really physically not well, and really it holds them back to be in their prime to lead at this level. Of course, the other areas of health, like financial health, the ability to have great self-care for yourself, family health, right? There's so many more spiritual health, right? There's so many different areas of your health that are so important. And I would say that if you're aspiring to be a senior leader, don't wait for it. Some people are working their tails off to get to this level of leadership and they're neglecting some of these areas. If you're trying or aiming to be a senior leader, you got to start building these habits now and be ready for it. And if you are a senior leader and you're, assessing these different areas of your life and you want to make changes, it's never too late. I work with leaders all the time about like reassessing where they're at, and trying to take a look at how do they make adjustments and use partners, and use people to help them make these adjustments to get in their prime. Talk to leaders all the time and say, you can't do this job well without having the foundation of your health to do it. So that's number four. All right, number five. This one I've learned, I was in recruiting and talent acquisition for a long time as a part of my career. And when I learned this, I always take this for granted that some people, everybody knows this, but who you have on your team is key to your success and paramount. I know it's so cliche, it's so cliche sounding, but I've seen it play out time and time again. When you hire the right person and you have a great hire, and learning how to hire as a senior leader is so important because one person can really make a difference on a team. Managing top performers is a big skill set that a senior leader needs to know and how to exercise, because some people are not sure how to handle top talent. They get intimidated by top talent, and it ends up working against them if they don't do this well. And then on the flip side, if you hire the wrong person, or if you have the wrong person on an existing team, one person that is not performing well or is negatively impacting the culture, they can take down an entire team. And if they're high up enough in the company, they can really affect the entire company culture if they are allowed to continue to behave in a way that's not it's not positive for the team. So I will say, who you have on your team as a C-suite or senior leader, so key. And again, I know it's cliche, but being able to like have skill sets in this area is like, it's insane. It's insane to how much it can impact the entire org. Number six. So what I learned from senior leaders is that it's really important to love your job before you leave it. Here's what I mean here. Again, I've talked to lots of leaders about making changes and shifting roles or taking new roles and making a change within their career path. And that's okay, right? That's great. However, what's really important to know is that why, and to have the clarity on why you're leaving that role in that company, if that's what you choose to do. If you're choosing to leave to escape your current feelings about your situation, and you just don't like how it feels, again, you're not happy with how it feels and what's going on there. You got to have the clarity on knowing if it's just trying to escape the feeling of what you're going through or trying to escape some sort of difficulty rather than like some tangible reasons that you like and that you really want to look at in terms of like being like very clear on leaving that job. Reason why, if you're just trying to escape your feelings, the grass is not always greener on the other side because some of those challenges that you're maybe trying to run away from, they're just going to follow you to that new job. An example of this is, somebody that may be challenged with leading a difficult, either like with a difficult employee or leading under a difficult boss and really just not liking the day-to-day difficulty of having difficult conversations. Now, again, if you're practicing having those conversations and you're working through it and you're coming to the conclusion that this is just not the right fit for a lot of other different reasons, it's perfectly okay to say, you know what, this is not the right fit. But if you're just doing it to try to get away and run away from the situation at hand without actually trying to work through it first, important to know. Important to know, reason being, because if you're not overcoming some of those challenges and you're not at least trying to know that you tried, if you take that lack of that skill set with you, it's just going to follow you. Happy to talk more about that, but I see that a lot. People wanting to try to leave their job just to escape what's going on. Okay. Number 7, what I learned from senior leaders. When you get to this level of leadership, it's still 50-50. And what I mean by that, a lot of leaders that I encounter, they want to get to the next level of leadership. They want to get and assume the different title. They want to get that pay. They want to they're high achievers and they're chasing after the next goal. Totally fine. Nothing wrong with that. But a lot of times, some leaders that I encounter, that are rising through their ranks, they sometimes get disillusioned. And I see them that they think that when they achieve that certain title, when they get that certain level of pay, they think that is going to equate to happiness. That if I can just get there, I'll be happy. My problems will be solved. Everything's going to somehow be better. That's just what I need to have, right? So when I mean 50-50, when you get to that, what I see a lot of times happen is leaders will ascend to that level. They'll finally get that goal, and maybe they are initially happy, but you give it a little bit of time, and boom, right back to, again, that dissatisfaction and wanting the next level, like immediately. Now, I want to be clear here. I don't mean that these senior leaders or these leaders should not go for it and try to hit that goal. I still think it's important. I'm a big fan of setting goals, and I'm a big fan of going after what you want. But I think you have to know why you're going after what you want. And if you're doing it just because you think when you get that thing, it's going to make you happier, I think that's a false pretense. Like, it's a false reason, right? I don't think it's it's not real, because when you get there, a lot of times I see it, senior leaders, there's going to be great things about it. And again, nothing wrong with wanting more pay, wanting a bigger title, nothing wrong with that. But there's lots of things that will be a positive, but you're still going to have some of the 50-50, meaning some of the negative emotions surrounded with it. Okay. That's just life. That's just human experience. And to have that disillusion, I think is tricky. I've seen leaders do this. I know this one leader, she went after this role, and the whole time she'd been in this, she joined a company and was in this role, she felt like she was undertitled, and all she was doing was chasing the next level, the next role. She finally got it. She got the promotion, and almost immediately, like, she was initially happy, right? But almost immediately was unhappy and wanted the next job. Why? She was chasing it and she thought it was going to make her happy when she got to that level of leadership, and she just wasn't. So it's fascinating. So understanding it's still 50-50 when you get to there. So no, again, not saying don't chase it. Don't chase, I'm not saying don't chase the goal, but know why you're chasing the goal. And again, coaching can help give you that clarity. All right, number 8. Another thing I see and what I've learned from senior leaders is that there is this myth, I think, that people have looking at senior leaders, and they have this myth that leaders at the senior and the C-suite level, somehow when you get to that level, you've got it all figured out. That is not the case. Now, I say this with the most amount of love and appreciation and respect and regard for people in this role, because most are highly successful, very intelligent, and do have a lot figured out. But a lot of times I think that, again, people looking up at this level, they believe that they have all the answers, and they don't. They don't have all the answers. They have a lot of answers. They're very, very intelligent, but leaders at junior levels are looking to these leaders for answers. And they're defaulting as if they're the experts, they know everything, and that they've got it figured out. So we'll say this to you looking to ascend to these levels, a great practice and skill set here would be like getting ready for this by starting to craft your own solutions and making your own suggestions rather than defaulting to leadership all the time that they have all the answers. Doesn't mean you don't collaborate with them, doesn't mean that they might not make decisions and bring you great solutions. That's all good and well. But I think just assuming that they will give you all the answers, yeah, it's just not the case. And as senior leaders too, I think it's okay to know when you don't have all the answers and to let people know that. And at times you are expected to have answers, right? Um, but yeah, that's a myth that I've learned. All right, number 9. One big thing that I've learned from senior leaders is that what got you to that level, what you've had to build along the way to rising to a senior leader, will not always necessarily get you to the next level of leadership. Now, this one's really tricky because I think what's so fascinating, and I see senior leaders lean on this all the time, they've achieved a certain level of success because of some of the habits they've built, because of some of the things that they've done, rising through the ranks, because of all those things that made them successful. Sometimes they just really don't want to let those things go. But I will say, sometimes when you get to that level, it's an identity shift. And there's parts of it, of course, that you want to take with you. But there's parts when you get to being a senior level leader, you have to burn parts of it down. You have to reinvent yourself. You have to continue growing. And there's certain parts of it that just won't carry you up to the next level. I think about leaders that hold on to some of the individual contributor skill sets that they have. Sometimes you see this with like micromanagement or, fear of delegating and things like that. They really get afraid of letting go of certain parts of the business because, again, they've been successful in holding so tight to those things and really like being so much in the weeds and making all the decisions and micromanaging and not trusting. And again, that is one skill set you have to learn at that level of leadership, and how to build up the teams to be able to make those decisions and to let some of that go. And that's not easy. That's not easy to do. Another thing I think that I see like sort of like a subtopic underneath this is also when you're class jumping. Now, what I mean by this, if you had maybe a family that did not have executives, maybe they were blue collar, or maybe they were middle management, and they weren't senior level leaders and they weren't executives in your family, maybe you had that experience in your family, and then all of a sudden you were jumping into the executive levels and to that different class set, and that it's a different set of skills and it's a different set of cultural rules to learn. Now, say what you will about it, like it, don't like it, that's totally fine, but that's just the reality of it. And I will say that same thing. You're learning this different skill set, and it takes a lot of savvy. Some of this, I think it gets labeled as like executive presence, like how you're carrying yourself, how you're branding yourself, how you're speaking, how you're presenting. Sometimes it comes up as like navigating politics, and how do you have that savviness to navigate the internal culture? Sometimes it comes up as how you are leading people and how you confront people and how the nuanced the nuanced communication that you have to have. So I think that sometimes, again, it comes with these different labels or like skins on it, if you will. But really, it really is learning these different skill sets. And I will say this, as a woman too, again, we're kind of pioneering in the executive ranks. A lot of women haven't been exposed to women leaders that are working parents that are rising this level, and they're having to navigate this jump. And they're having to experience different levels of skill set that they may just not have seen in their immediate circle and their immediate sense of mentorship. So it's something different. And when we talk about this with senior leaders, I think it's super helpful just to like understand and recognize and realize what those skill sets are and what they still have left to learn and which ones you have to kind of leave behind, because sometimes it just feels so scary to let go of something that made you so successful at this point. But it's really important to look at these skill sets and know where you still have some room for growth. All right, the last one at number 10, and this kind of wraps this all up and sums this all up, is to say for senior leaders, there is very little to no support given to leaders at this level from a development perspective. A lot of times leaders at this level are expected to already have figured it out and to know how to lead at this level, even if it's their first time assuming a senior level of leadership. There is very little learning and development dedicated to them. Usually I find that it's up to the senior leaders to go and find external support, to find like maybe their own executive coach or to find their own like team to support them. And it's interesting to me because it's so fascinating. These leaders, you're leading the largest amount of people in the organization, and you have the most amount of complexity, sometimes global complexity, and you're left to your own devices to kind of figure it out. And at times, again, the leaders that are leading you don't have a ton of time to coach and develop. And who do you turn to? You're left to your own devices. So I say that to say it's totally normal. Or say normal, but it's totally common, I'll say, that you don't have a ton of resources, but you kind of have to think of yourself like an athlete in their prime when you're leading within an organization and you've got a ton of people in your responsibility, a ton of P&L responsibility. You're like an athlete in your prime. You have to find the right group to surround you. You have to think, who can support me? What do I need support with? And make sure that you go out and get it and be proactive in it, because at times you're not given all the support you need at this level. It's up to you to know what you need and ask for it. And at times it might be up to you to figure that out. So that, my friends, that is just a few of the lessons that I've learned from leaders at this level. And again, I want to say and end this with a big love letter to all the leaders at this level. I'm so grateful to have exposure and experience in coaching senior leaders. I've learned a ton, and there's so many great lessons and great things that I've learned. But I will say this, again, if you need help with any of these things, again, these are things that I find very common in some of the challenges. And like I said, the mental toughness and the mental resiliency and the mental fortitude that you have to have at this level, it takes a lot. And I think, you don't have to do it alone. You absolutely can optimize for leading at this level, and you can get support where you need it and when you need it. And if you want to talk to me about that, by all means, I am here to help, and I'm always here as a resource. You can reach out to me very easily. My website is EliciaCowanCoaching.com. It's ELISIAKEOWN coaching.com. And I'd be so happy to hear from you. And if there's any lessons you want to share or you think I missed any on the list, by all means, let me know. I love to hear from you listeners. I've heard from a couple of you last week, and I love it when you reach out. So that's all I have for today. We will talk to you next time. Have a great couple weeks, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Executive Coaching Podcast with Alicia Cowan. If you're ready to have an executive coach who's ready to help you lead your team to success, then book an introductory call at aliciacowancoaching.com/call.